I'm Steven Durren. I'm a custom gun maker. I'm a professional member of the American Custom Gunmakers Guild. My categories are stockmaker and metalsmith. I'm also a past president of the guild. I originally went to gunsmithing school in the mid-70s, and at the time I was not able to actually find a job gunsmithing. So I did machine work for quite a few years, doing a little gunsmithing on the side, until eventually I decided I needed to do it full-time and was able to get a job in a rather large gun shop doing general repairs. And then I just went after the custom work, and that gradually developed until that's what I was doing full-time. I was doing custom work full-time for the past 15 years or so. Well, you would buy a custom gun because you want something you can't get off the shelf. Either particular features or quality or such. Sometimes it's just so it's different. Sometimes it's what you want. Technically, a custom gun is anything that's been modified from the factory to the customer's request. Some of the custom work is simply modifying a existing gun. Some of it, we'll call it a full build, where we'll start with an action and modify the action or clean it up, add the parts, build the stock, and we build a complete rifle to the customer's specifications. And that's, of course, the work I enjoy the most. Well, I think most everyone initially joins the guild for the recognition that, it's a qualification. You have to prove you're good enough to get in the guild. And so when you're voted in, you've had some very good gun makers say you're good enough to join their ranks. That is certainly part of, I think, everyone's initial reason to join the guild. But then beyond that, once you're in the guild, you realize its real purpose is to promote custom gun making, both being a source for finding individual gun makers and for expanding the presence of custom gun making and encouraging more people to join the trade and so on. Save all the knowledge and information that's within the guild. To me, it's a desire for a certain level of quality of work and a desire to produce that, caring about your work and doing something. I see a human connection to the work, to the finished product, and a desire to do it well. I tell them it's not a way to get rich, but basically what I've seen in successful gun makers is it's something they're going to do no matter what, and they're just trying to figure out a way to get paid to do it. It's a long road to hoe. It's the aspiring gun maker is going to have to want to do it and work hard at it. A lot of study. There's not a lot in books, so you're studying what other people are doing, looking at their work. Everybody does their work differently, different types of work, shotgun work, rifle work, pistol work. You need to decide early which direction you think you want to go and study and work in that direction. Do the work. You can't just say, I'll just read a bunch of books and watch a bunch of videos, and then at some point I'll make a full-blown custom rifle that's beautiful. No, you're going to make a whole bunch of custom rifles or semi-custom rifles that 6 months after you finish them, you're going to be ashamed of them and do them over. That's all part of the process. Now that I'm retired, my list of projects I want to do has changed. Some of them were done to show off my skill. I have a project that's been shelved, a match pair of Springfield bolt actions, a 30-06 and a 22 long rifle, the two guns, identical guns with different calibers, and that would be good to show off my skills and promote work. In terms of just owning it, it's on the shelf for now. So there have been projects like that. And say now that all the work is for myself, there are different things I want. You know. There's been a lot of favorites. One of my favorites is one we're going to be doing in the video. I did the metalwork originally to apply for metalsmith in the guild. I was at a shoot and somebody came up with the idea, and it's a Winchester High Wall Takedown with two barrels, one in a center fire and the other in 22 rim fire, and it's set up to just quickly interchange. It was a challenge to work out how this is going to happen, and there's a lot of intricate work there. You know, it was a good example to display my metalworking skills. And making another one now, because the first one I made, somebody else liked it quite well and gave me large sums of money for it. And so I'm making another one, and that's what we'll be doing in this video. Okay, well, what we're going to be working on in this video is a project I've done a couple times now. What we have is a Winchester High Wall in a takedown version, and we've made it with two barrels. The main barrel is a center fire barrel. In this case, it's a 40-65. Now, the Winchester Takedown, it's a simple quarter turn, and it locks in place. And there's a latch here that keeps it from turning back. We've got an extractor and, simple extractor. Alright, the second barrel, just to make things more difficult, is going to be a 22 long rifle barrel. Now, to use the same firing pin, we've had to use an offset chamber. And then there's a slave extractor so that the 40-65 extractor will be able to extract the 22 shell. But it's all been worked out, so all we have to do is slip it in place, you latch it, and the 40-65 extractor grabs our slave extractor and works the 22 shell. What we'll be doing is, I'll be using this piece of bar stock and pretending it's a barrel. We have to set up our offset for the barrel, for the chamber. Then from that offset we'll thread the barrel. The threads have to be relieved on the sides for the takedown, for the quarter turn, and then the extractor parts are made and so forth. Quite a few operations there, but we'll get through it. So that is the project. Okay, now to do the offset, as I mentioned, we're calling this a rifle barrel. That was a 22 caliber. We have to create that shank diameter that will be offset. Now to do this, I will be doing it in the mill. I have a fixture. I take a V-block, make sure it's got a threaded hole in the end. And then this plate, we've got a small step here so that I can slip this V-block on here. And bolt it in place. And I'll be mounting it on the mill, hanging off the table. So I can mount my barrel like that, and we'll be able to work on the end of the barrel. Alright, now here you can see how I set the plate up on the mill. Got it nice and square to the table. Got the V-block over here so I can mount a barrel and work on the breech end. This fixture is also quite handy for doing extractor cuts and so forth. And then we'll just put a gauge pin in the bore so I can find the bore. Put the rubber band on there so the pin doesn't just fall all the way through. And then now I'm going to use the edge finder to find the location. Okay, now I have found the center of the gauge pin here, so that'll represent the center of the bore. We know that location. The offset we need this bore to sit 125 thousandths off of center. So I will now move it over 125 thousandths. I'll zero up again. That's going to be the center of the barrel shank. Now I need to turn that, so to speak. To do that, I'll be using pretty much a standard boring head with the tool bit turned around, so we'll be able to turn. Now I will be turning the shank slightly larger than the finished thread. The finished thread is 937 thousandths in diameter, so I will make that shank an inch in diameter for now. This here we're all set up with the boring head and it's set to cut on the outside. I'll be turning down. Now I'll turn the shank a little longer than the finished shank will be. But as you notice, it's only cutting on one side because we're offset. So make a cut, bring the tool in farther, and I will continue doing this until I've got, the 1 inch diameter shank I'm after. Okay, now here it's cutting all the way around, and you can see, that we are offset from the bore. We've established our location. We'll go ahead and bring it into a finished diameter. Let's get this on the camera. But we can see it's offset. This represents where the outside of the barrel will be, and we have an offset bore. I do have a ways to go, so I'll go ahead and bring it into my finished diameter. A few more cuts. Brought it down. This is now 1 inch in diameter, which is a little larger than the finished thread will be, which is great. Now before I take it out of here for the next operation, I'm going to mill a little line across this axis so I know which axis, what the angle of my offset is. Okay, now I've put this slot across here. That's just a reference point, so in other operations, I can get my angle right. I know that it's offset on this axis. All right, let's go ahead and pull that out of there. Get a better look at it. Okay, so now we have, this shank is offset. So we have an offset bore there. Now the next operation will be to go on the lathe and turn this down concentric with that. Now on the full length barrel, we have the offset chamber, but when I turn the outside at the muzzle, I use the actual bore to center out there. So the bore is actually at an angle through the whole thing. Now here on our test piece, I'm just going to turn it straight because it's solid bar. But we like the idea of it ending up, the muzzle concentric, and that's what looks right. Alright, now what we're trying to do is, we've got it turned roughly round. We're going to be cutting an octagon next, and in our fixture we're going to be covering my witness mark up. So what I'm going to do is put another little flat across here to just transfer my orientation to the outside. So I've just squared it up here in the mill, and I'll just mill a little flat here. Okay, now what we're going to go ahead and cut this into an octagon form like we do our barrel. Now, I showed you where I'd put a flat out here as my reference point. So when I set the blank in here, I was able to square up off that flat. So our octagon flats will line up with our offset. This is a slightly modified, index head with 5C collet. And it lets me index it around every 45 degrees to each flat. We got to support it, a tailstock here to support, and in the middle we got a jack screw and an overclamp. We'll be milling on the side. Now, back up a second. Right now I'm just going to cut a straight octagon. If I wanted to cut a tapered octagon, this whole fixture would just be tipped at the appropriate taper, and that would give us our tapered octagon. But for this, we're just going to cut it straight. I'll bring my cutter down. Okay, now I've got about 45 thousandths to take off of this. I'm going to do it in 2 passes. So I'm going to take about 25 off. Okay, that's, I've made my first cut, and I know what this dimension needs to be. Okay, so now we have all 8 flats cut. Our next operation will be to go back in the lathe, and we'll thread the shank and start to fit it to the receiver. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and thread this barrel shank to screw our receiver extension onto. This is pretty straightforward. I'll be turning the threads and threading this on. We're working off that outside diameter we turned, because at this point, say everything on the outside of the barrel is based off of that. And this will thread on. So I'm going to go ahead and get started on that. Okay, now we've got a good tight thread on there. Now we need to make sure it's going to tighten up in the right orientation. Okay, we want this flat is the top flat. Well, we've got almost a half a turn to go. So I'll have to take off some of the shoulder to let it screw on farther. And this is 16 threads per inch, so we got a pitch of 62.5 thousandths. So if I took 62.5 thousandths off that shoulder, it would screw on another full turn. Well, we want to go about a half a turn, which would then I'd get to 30 thousandths off that shoulder. But I'll be safe and take a little less. Now I've marked which will be my top flat. So I've taken some off the shoulder. Let's see where we get. Okay, I've got about a half a flat to go. So I just do my math. Okay. We're almost there. Left just another thousandths or so on the shoulder so we can wrench it in tight and keep it there. So now the next thing is it has to be faced to length. We'll measure on the receiver. This will be butting up against the face of the receiver and measure to the breech face and make it about 5 thousandths short so it never actually contacts the breech face. And then I'll face this to that length. Okay, now in the Winchester I have to make this little cut here that it clears a feature on the breech block, so I'll go ahead and cut that now. It's just, this deep down to a smaller diameter. Okay, now that finishes up the lathe work in terms of threading. That the shank's threaded, trimmed to length. I'll be taking the lug off here, and we need to remove the threads on the quadrants to create the interrupted thread. So I'll go ahead and start getting that set up. Okay, what we've done now, I brought the barrel over here using the indexing head again. I've changed the way it supports. I got these little cat heads here. So I've supported the barrel in the back and here in the front. And what I'll be doing is milling away the threads for the takedown. Now the amount I mill off on each side, I was able to come across some original Winchester drawings. Well, somebody else did. I've got a copy. And it'll show me, how much is taken away. And we mill it with a 5/16 ball nose end mill. And I'll be running it this way. And it comes up close to the shoulder. Since the lug is 3/8 of an inch thick, so I'll be bringing the cutter up to just under 3/8 of an inch from the shoulder. So at the base I'll leave full thread. But then I'll be making a cut, indexing it over a few degrees, making another cut until I have that side cut away, and then I'll do the other side. And I say we've indicated, so the threads are running true. The depth of cut is whatever it takes me to just remove the threads. And I'll go ahead and finish getting set up here. Okay, now we're starting to mill away the threads. I've made my first pass here. So I'll come back out and then index over another. I'll go 5 degrees. Make my next pass in. Another 5 degrees. And then so on. I'll keep working around this whole side until I've removed that side and then switch to the other side. Found that by going in 5-degree increments is smooth enough that it just cleans up, polishes up later with very little work. Got to go a little deeper, not quite getting all the thread off. There we are. Again, my depth of cut is just to remove all the thread. Alright, well now we have the relief cut on the threads, and I think fits into the lug here. Let's start it straight. Screw that in hand tight for the moment. Now with interrupted threads, slides right in, locks in place. So now we just need some extractor cuts and fit an extractor, and I'll go ahead and start getting set up for that. Okay, now before we can do any extractor cuts, we need to go ahead and cut the chamber. So I've got it mounted in the lathe here, and then just like doing any other chamber, I just get a gauge pin in the bore and indicate it in. So we're running on the bore now, and let the outside run off. So I'll go ahead and cut this chamber. So at this point it's pretty much like doing anything else. And we're done. Okay, now I'm set up. I'm going to drill the hole for the slave extractor. Now I've worked out all my locations previously, so I'll use those same numbers. So we'll just go in here and first drill the main hole location. Now that gives us the main hole for the extractor, for the barrel mounted extractor. Now one more thing I'm going to do while I'm in this position before I forget, our firing pin will be hitting right here at the edge of the chamber. So I'm going to cut a relief to make sure that the firing pin doesn't hit the barrel. And so I need to get a small end mill here to provide clearance. Change that. Okay, now we just use a small diameter end mill. A little relief. We just cut that to the center that would clear where the firing pin will actually strike. Just a little bit shallow of the rim recess, so we still leave that surface for the cartridge. Okay. Next thing we'll have to do is start to make some room for that's the extractor, the gun. It needs to sit in here so it can reach the slave extractor. So we'll get set up for that. The extractor's at an angle due to the way it swings in and out, so I use a tapered end mill that matches that angle. Okay, now that gives me the clearance for this part of the extractor to come in. We'll have to set it up another way and cut the side of the barrel for clearance on this part of the extractor. So we'll go ahead and get that set up. Okay, now we're just going to cut the side clearance for the extractor on this side. The back side of the cut isn't overly critical, it's just got to provide some clearance. Need a little bit more. That gives us the clearance for that extractor to sit in there, flush with the barrel, and then the next thing would be to make the actual slave extractor. And I'll show you what's involved in doing that. Okay, now this is the finished extractor for the part. To make it, we're first going to we would just turn a piece of steel, like that, and then a lot of the head is cut away. Hopefully you can see, the face is like that, where it fits into the hole and reaches over to the 22 chamber. To cut this away, we'd go back to that little dividing head, set it up, and with an end mill, cut there, index it around, cut there, index around, so this would be just the shaft with the tab sticking out. Once we have that, next step would be to cut this flat. That's where the cross pin is going to keep it from rotating once out of the barrel and limit its travel. I have a fixture for that. This represents the angle between the chamber and the extractor. So I'd be able to take that blank, slide it in there, press it in. I've got a set screw there to hold it in place, and then come in with an end mill and mill that flat. After I've done that, next step is to cut this groove here that this extractor will fit into. Now this extractor fits the larger rim, the 4570 rim. So I put it in here. Line up the groove, hold it in with a set screw. This portion here is actually the size of that 4570 rim. So I'd put it in the lathe, turn this diameter to clear up that portion of the extractor, and then come in with another tool and cut this diameter. We're going to cut across the extractor and leave that notch. And then we just have to cut for the actual 22 rim there. And then the extractor's done. and it's a small part, and then as it fits in the barrel, a spring is put behind it, and I've figured out where to put the pin and this flat. Like I say, as I said, the pin will keep it lined up as it goes in and out, and it limits it how far it extends. The idea being that when it's in the barrel and extends there, it will be perfectly lined up with where the extractor will be in the receiver. So as we turn the barrel into the receiver, it will automatically line up with the extractor. You don't have to fiddle with lining it up. But then it's going to fit there and extract the 22 shell. Now, one reason I have, a 4570 base for the center fire cartridge is so that, I want that large rim so we can get this extractor back, so we have room in the 22 barrel between this extractor and the rimfire chamber to have an extractor. And, so that would make us our, our 2-barrel set. Why would we do this? Because it's cool, to show off. Now, hopefully, out of this, I don't know how many people are going to use this video to make a 2-barrel set for their high wall, but hopefully I've shown you a few techniques, how to do an interrupted thread. If you're going to do a takedown just with 1 barrel, you're going to be doing that. And some of my fixtures might be useful for you to execute a few of your own ideas. And you just got to keep coming up with ideas, and the way they happen is to do them. So now this is that finished barrel I had. That extractor fits in there. As I said, I put a spring in there to help locate it for assembly. We've got that cross hole that keeps it from flying out and helps locate it. Also keeps it from turning. And let me get this breech block and extractor back in the receiver. So then as it opens, the extractor is out. You can slide in. Slide right in. Excuse me, I can't do anything. This has to be screwed back on the barrel. Okay, so here we have it. I got the lug screwed back on. As an extractor is spring loaded into the right location, so when we put it in, have the action all the way open, slides in, and the quarter turn, the extractor slides right into the slave extractor. Now we've got it, the extractor there, slip in a shell, fire, extracts the 22. Chamber the round. Close action, bang, out comes a 22. And then same thing, we just switch to the center fire barrel and we shoot 40-65.